Now we're going back to American University of Sharjah, and they're going to attend the event virtually. Students of American University of Sharjah, please turn on your cameras and switch on your microphones and share your screen. Please unmute yourselves. Please unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, everyone in the
The
chat.
endless structures of the Great Wall of China, the riveting waterfalls in Niagara, the sparkling sight of the Eiffel Tower that looms over Paris. I have just named a very tiny fraction of some of the most highly visited tourist destinations, which of course are a distant memory during our COVID-19 quarantine. The high level of movement within these tourist destinations may seem like a definite economic win, but at what cost? Good morning to one and all present here today. At this point in time, I'm sure none of you are stranger to the topic we'll be presenting today. Sustainable tourism is a responsible tourism. But I'm sure my team and I will assure you that our stance is the most reasonable one in all regards. I want to begin by smoothing out the definition of tourism. It refers to all of the activities undertaken by the visitor economy. And of course, it's not a surprise that the tourism industry has been labeled one of the fastest growing industries in the world. It's this very popularity that brings about the need for sustainable tourism, which focuses on taking care of the three pillars, which is economic, social, and environmental. For the purpose of this speech, our team decided to introduce a four fictional country which we'd like to call the Kingdom of Trocia. Being a developing country, the leaders of Trocia want to expand the tourism sector by observing trends in other nations and pinpointing the best practices undertaken. Keep this in mind as my teammates take you through the various capacities of sustainable tourism and what exactly it means for a tourist populated country. We'll now move on to discuss how this fits in with responsible tourism, the current issues at hand, and how exactly they can be solved by adopting sustainable tourism.
So, the Kingdom of Trocia heard about the concept of sustainable tourism during an international virtual conference this year. But most people in Trocia don't know what sustainable tourism is and how it's related to responsible tourism. After a little research, the people decided to hold a meeting to discuss these concepts. Responsible tourism is about making better places for people to live in and better places for people to visit. Some of the goals of responsible tourism are to minimize negative economic, environmental, and social impacts, to improve economic conditions for local people, and to be culturally sensitive. After this meeting, the people of Trocia have concluded that at its most basic, responsible and sustainable tourism do share similar pillars. However, sustainable tourism is a goal that can only be achieved by adopting the principles of responsible tourism.
All right, so let's now delve into the issues revolving around sustainable tourism that inhibits it from being a responsible tourism. My math teacher has always told me that to really find a good solution, one must understand all angles of a problem. Over here, we will be discussing the problems that can take place for adopting sustainable tourism. However, we also present solutions to these. Problems in carrying out sustainable tourism can be divided into three modules: general issues of sustainability that affect sustainable tourism, tourism's and their relation to sustainable tourism issues, and lastly, sustainable tourism specific issues. So, to begin with, the general issues of sustainable tourism in carrying out sustainability. Here are some of the common issues. To explain a few important ones among these, we will be talking about the economical barriers, which means not all sustainable solutions are cost effective. Political barriers include policies that are not aligned with sustainable goals. Moving on to speak about sustainable tourism issues linked with the other tourisms. Agritourism, which is related to agriculture sightseeing, rural tourism is related to lives involving rural people, and ecotourism are safaris. All of these tourisms have their own individual problems that fall under the bracket of sustainable tourism. Thereby, these also need sustainable solutions. And the last module is the sustainable tourism specific issues. I have had the travel bug for quite a while now, and unfortunately, I've seen many of these issues take place in and around me, such as carbon and other emissions, job creation and contribution to local economy, franchising and hotel network values, energy consumption and water waste, working conditions and responsible sourcing, health and wellness, food safety, and e-security.
With this in mind, the Kingdom of Trosha now understands the issues that they face. They now understand the needed practices that they should put into place so as to curb sustainability issues in regards to tourism. They've then set goals. In these goals, some include making optimal use of the environmental resources given to them. Others include involving local people in decision makings that affect the local people's lives. Furthermore, they aim to make positive contributions to the conservation of natural and cultural heritage, as well as the maintenance of world diversity. Other things also include becoming more culturally sensitive, and this engenders respect between both tourists and hosts, and it helps build local pride and confidence. In terms of solutions, the Kingdom of Trosha has looked at other countries' practices. For example, a program in Australia named Wavelength implemented a no-touch policy in using sunscreen that doesn't impact the corals. This led to more eco-friendly practices within the tourist industry. Others, again, include Summit Expeditions and Nomadic Experience, a program in Tanzania, and they use portable toilets with biodegradable disposable systems, seeing that so that many of their efforts were aimed at maintaining the local environment. The Bees Elephant Sanctuary had a no contact, hands off policy, ensuring that animals are never forced into contact. These solutions pushed for more controlled tourism. Other solutions, again, include solar powered electronics, community run initiatives. We know that tourism accounts for 5% of global carbon emissions. 4% of this is transportation, 1% in regards to the accommodation sector. If we move towards more sustainable practices within the tourist industry, we would be able to curb CO2 emissions, reduce waste, ensure more environmental friendly practices, and more. The Kingdom of Trosa also consulted both Paul V. Matthew and Srijesh, who conducted a study within a specific area, and they found that 87% of local residents' favorable perception of responsible tourism practices had a significant positive relation with the destination's sustainability, again perceived by both the local community and tourists. So all in all, the Kingdom of Trosha now understands the solutions needed to be implemented in order to become have more sustainable tourism, as well as being more responsible in their tourist practices.
And the matter of fact is, we can see these solutions being implemented in today's world. For example, in the Six Senses Resort located in Fiji, which is completely solar powered. Not only that, but it has its very own water filtering system, all while promoting luxury and cultural awareness. Not only that, there's also the Swiss Foundation for Solidarity, which supports projects to promote better lifestyle in tourist destinations through intellectual learning by connecting tourists and locals together. Not only that, it also promotes local support. For example, it supports farmers. When abroad, one has no other option but to eat local food. Most of this local food comes from locally grown producers who are struggling to stay afloat. Foreign purchase of food in tourist areas help farmers grow and remain in business. It also helps stimulate the economy. Visiting tourist destinations and spending money helps stimulate the economy to better help locals grow. It educates them on how other parts of the world operate and helps them earn a living to support their families and keep their livelihood alive. In fact, we all share our common ground. The global travel and tourism industry creates approximately 11% of the world's employment as of 2016. Economic, social, and environmental aspects of sustainable development include the interests of stakeholders, including indigenous people, local communities, visitors, industry, and the government. Sustainable tourism can better help tourists understand said cultures and build a responsible relationship. Sustainability is the goal, a goal which can only be achieved by people taking responsibility together to achieve it. Responsible tourism is about taking responsibility for making tourism sustainable and about what people do to address the many specific challenges we face. Today, we all live with a great sense of knowledge and responsibility because sustainable tourism indeed is responsible tourism.
And so, the Kingdom of Trocia adopts sustainable tourism as opposed to general, unsustainable, inefficient tourism. Is it a surprise? With the many issues that the current model of tourism put forth, such as the excessive amount of waste produced, the high amount of carbon emissions, and the disvalue of the local economy, in addition to the various other points we put forth. Now, of course, the Kingdom of Trocia is completely fictional. But it's clear at this point that sustainable tourism is the route to be adopted by all nations. With the solutions that Omer so eloquently put forth, what's stopping countries from following this route? Is it perhaps the higher level of efficiency in the economy? Or maybe the reduction of environmental damage? Yes, only time will tell. Thank you.
Thank you, American University of Sharjah, for this presentation. Now, please welcome Rochester Institute of Technology.
According to the UN Global Biodiversity environmental targets set in the past 10 years. Good morning. My name is Abdullah, and along with my colleagues Ashad, Chris, Basim, and Aman, we'll be talking about why sustainable tourism is the way forward. I have a question for you guys. Do you work hard? Of course. Do you work hard? Everyone does, whether it may be at home, in the office, or in school. The monotony of day-to-day life leads us to find a place and time to vent our frustrations and just relax. So every year, we book a flight and go to our favorite destination, whether it may be Tokyo, New York. For me, financially, it's Abu Dhabi, but and yep. Well, according to the Dubai Department of Tourism and Commerce Marketing, Dubai has seen 16.7 million overnight visitors in 2019 alone, with a 5.1% increase from 2018. This makes Dubai a global tourist spot, and we must do better. The time to act is now. Tourism faces many challenges today, and what's the answer to this? Well, you guessed it, sustainable tourism. Sustainable tourism basically balances promoting the economy, protecting the environment, as well as catering to the needs of the local population. Tourism faces many challenges, and we aim to provide some ideas as to how we could improve the tourism industry to protect the environment and our lives. My colleague Basim will talk more.
Unfortunately, tourism, a method of relaxation and leisure for most, tends to cause a series of consequences for their host countries and citizens, ranging from minor changes, such as preferable tourist infrastructure, to more significantly major changes and gambling rates, to even intrinsic changes such as a change in moral views and beliefs. This can be seen in the Middle East, where the conservative views have reduced significantly due to the influx of Western ideology and views. The question is this a consequence of globalization? Let me set this straight. Globalization offers a wider range of, a more diverse range of communities to interact with one another and mutually benefit from both cultures. It does not, however, entail the arrogance of the ignorance of an individual towards the ethics of a foreign country. A more contrasting idea, however, is standardization, which from its word can be seen as setting a standard. It entails a country changing its more or less views and beliefs to accommodate a tourist's sense of familiarity, more or less a home away from home. Well, it should be considered that if a tourist wishes to be at home, maybe he should think of staying at home instead of inadvertently crippling a country's heritage. All of who we are is what our culture says. Do we wish to lose this? This is just one of the many socio-ethical consequences of tourism. My friend Aman will take over the environmental aspects.
Thank you so much, Basim. So, the travel industry also contributes largely in other environmental issues and climate change, especially with regards to carbon emissions. As of 2011, the UN's Environment Program suggests that these carbon emissions are due to the contribution of the three sectors involved in tourism industry, which is aviation, transportation, and accommodation. Let's look at the transport and accommodation industry for now. So, the World Tourism Organization actually reports that nearly 5.3% of carbon emissions in 2030 will be due to the transport sector in the tourism industry. This is due to the increase in domestic and international arrivals, which directly tells us that this increases CO2 emissions as well. As you can see here, predictions made from 2016 to 2030 show a clear increase of nearly 30% of emissions. One of the factors behind this is because of the bad habits of tourists that utilize transport services that obviously use fossil fuels. Another industry to look at is the hotel industry or the hospitality industry. This industry accounts for nearly 1% of the total global carbon emissions. But this is steadily increasing by 2050 to match the increasing demand for which we need to supply nearly 80,000 hotels by the end of 2050. Now, it's not about the number of hotels, but it's the way these hotels function. The way these hotels function right now, they will have to achieve nearly a reduction by 66% of emissions by 2030 to actually meet the criteria set by the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, this number sounds huge and it's a big challenge, but this is a challenge that we need to take for a better future tomorrow. Now, how do we bridge the gap between tourism and sustainable tourism? For that, I would like to pass it on to Chris.
Thank you, Aman. So if we consider the fact that according to the UNWTO, in domestic tourism, car emissions are the largest contributor of carbon emissions, we need to consider how we can, and it also plays a significant role in the emissions with international travel as well. We need to consider how we can, what are the possible solutions for the problem. We propose clean invest tourism. If we assume that tourists who are able to come to Dubai to engage in tourism are come from a background of economic stability, a certain level of economic stability, and if we charge them a minor fee and reinvest this back into electric vehicles and alternative fuels, this enables the tourists to offset their carbon impact. In other words, a more passive form of sustainable tourism. In addition to this, we also propose promoting local food tourism. By promoting local food tourism, we're able to preserve cultural heritage. We're able to introduce tourists to the culture of the UAE. What we are able to do is instill local cultural values into tourists who attend, so that they do not just come to experience the urban architecture of Dubai or the other Emirates, but rather they come here to experience the culture and leave a changed person than they were before, ideally. I will now hand over to my colleague Asjad to speak further.
So one other idea that we have is one that has increased in popularity around the world. This is what is known as an eco-resort. So what sets an eco-resort apart from normal resorts? Well, as the name might suggest, this is a resort that is well integrated within the environment that it occupies. So, for example, this is the Al Maha Desert Resort located less than an hour's drive away from here. So as we can see, it is well integrated into the desert environment, and this integration allows them to promote local cultural activities such as falconry, horse riding, camel riding, even food tourism, as Chris mentioned. And of course, what also sets eco-resorts apart from normal resorts is the promotion of sustainable construction practices, as well as a total implementation of sustainable practices throughout the hotel. For example, limiting uses of plastics and even eliminating, in some cases, paper as well. As Aman mentioned, normal resorts are not really built with sustainability in mind. Of course, what we've presented here is just one small subset of the possible solutions that we have. And things like eco-resorts are in line with the Dubai Sustainable Tourism Initiatives. There are many more ideas out there, but of course, sustainable tourism is the future, and we believe that this is responsible tourism. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochester Institute of Technology. Now, I would like to welcome Al Ghurair University to present.